So our table of contents, here's what we're going to talk about today. We'll do a quick intro of both GRC and IAM. We'll talk about areas of intersection and divergence, and then we'll wrap it all up for you. So governance, risk, and compliance, GRC, and identity and access management, IAM, are the two largest, most important, and yet most problematic disciplines contained in or impacting a cybersecurity program. Today, we'll describe the intersections and divergences between GRC and IAM and encourage discussions regarding the value derived from well-managed GRC and IAM efforts. If you have any questions, please feel free to send them to me via the chat feature or to my personal email, dchamley@clango.com. You can also reach one of our SMEs by sending an email to info@clango.com or by giving us a call at 571-483-2728. So let's begin with a high-level review of GRC. GRC has become more popular as the burden brought on by compliance standards has increased. GRC's promise is that an ongoing program can reduce the compliance burden in at least two ways. The first being to keep and manage artifacts and other evidence of compliance for recurring assessments, audits, and examinations and regulations. The second being that GRC will optimize how you meet your compliance standards. And more importantly, if there are multiple standards you have to satisfy that have the same or similar requirements, GRC aims to meet these like requirements simultaneously. That way we're not duplicating efforts. Overall, having a well-managed GRC program simplifies requirements around managing audits, risks, and meeting mandated regulations. The GRC market's been with us for roughly 10 years, and high achievers have also successfully used components of risk management, sometimes beginning with information and operational risk. Just like IAM, there have been numerous stalled and or failed GRC implementations. Reasons for failure can range from lack of senior buy-in to overhyped expectations and or, a lack of adequate project management abilities on the part of the implementer. So similar to the reasons why IAM projects might fail, all of these things, having senior buy-in, having the right expectations, and having a team that knows what they're doing when installing a product, those are all vital to the success of your GRC project. So let's talk about GRC scope. GRC manages multiple areas for organizations. However, at its core, GRC manages policy, compliance, and risk. Other areas of management include business continuity, incident management, issues and findings, privacy, vulnerabilities, and threats, and the list goes on and on. We'll get into all that in just a moment. So with GRC managing all these things, you might be saying, well, how do I decide what should be included in my GRC program? And our answer to that is, well, what impacts your policies? What impacts your compliance standing? And so you say, why policies? Well, because policy violations can be tracked, and you must track those, because policy violations are risks. So you set these policies for a reason, and that reason was to mitigate risks. So if your policies are being violated, that presents a huge risk to your organization. Not only that, but policy violations will impact your compliance standing. So in a similar vein with compliance, compliance violations can and must be tracked. Compliance standards exist to increase visibility into your organization and decrease risk for your organization. If there's a compliance violation, it's introducing unnecessary risk into your environment. Anything that impacts your policy or compliance efforts should be included in your GRC program. Moving on to identity and access management, or IAM for those of you who that term is more familiar for. IAM is equally significant and daunting. Identity management includes access control, authentication, provisioning, and entitlements, attestations for access, and identity lifecycle management. The list goes on and on. It's also used to help expedite onboarding, getting employees up to speed quickly and efficiently, and offboarding. IAM is used by the high achievers to immediately terminate access, keeping systems safe and secure from former employees or contractors that have finished a job, et cetera, et cetera. Not only do IAM high achievers use IAM for security purposes to reduce risk, but they also look beyond their regulatory requirements. In the case of identity management, technologies and associated programs are used to improve customer and stakeholder experiences, and it can also be used to increase revenue. The increased mobility that comes with the well-run IAM program will give your employees more time to focus on helping the customers and getting their work done and increasing your revenue. Identity and access management, it's concerned, again, as I previously stated, with onboarding, provisioning cyber resources, and making adjustments when appropriate. The overall goal of identity and access management is to provide trusted automation of identity data flow between authoritative sources to target repositories for efficient access. Typically, that authoritative source is an Active Directory, although customers may select other sources of truth for identities, such as an HR database. There can be multiple sources of identities, and typically there are in most organizations, whether it's a directory, a database, or a list. Regardless of what you choose, there needs to be an authoritative source to create an entitlement repository for all access, for all user access. If you don't have that, you do not have an adequate IAM program. So before we get into the technical synergies between IAM and GRC, again, we must recognize IAM and GRC as the two most involved in resource-intensive disciplines within our cybersecurity efforts. They must be properly governed if they're going to run well. But what does that mean? Well, to us, it means soliciting relevant input from stakeholders from all affected business divisions and departments to gain complete or at least an agreed upon high-level consensus about the goals and functions of each program. When implementing, there must be expert-level planning and execution that carefully considers the stakeholders' input when carrying out the project. If you are not on the same page as an organization about what you want and what you need out of your IAM and GRC programs from the get-go, and you don't stay aligned as the process evolves, it will fail. You need to be on the same page. As far as hierarchy goes, the governance board reviews and provides input on enterprise-wide issues, while subordinate working groups provide input on optimal technologies and policies to be integrated into the GRC and IAM implementation. Policies can be considered a programmatic intersection as well, but typically GRC technology is authoritative and the IAM policies take on a subordinate role. So GRC will set the policies for the organization, and then the IAM program will enforce them. So now we'll get into a little bit of the technical integrations between IAM and GRC. One candidate for technical integrations is in incident management. Although not covered as a GRC topic, log aggregation generally is centralized into a syslog server or a security information and event management, a SIEM tool. The SIEM, in turn, can provide a feed into the GRC incident management application, and GRC vendors may advocate this as an approach as a single pane of glass for level 1 incident management personnel. So log management can detect anomalies, but only if we understand what we're looking for. So while your log management tool and your identity tools, whether it be an IAM program or a privileged account management, a PAM program, can notify your SOC staff that, hey, there's an alert, this doesn't look quite right. Does that really give sufficient information for the SOC team to process? We at Clango, we say no, and we'll get into that in just a moment. So as we move on to risk, For those that are in the identity space or have reviewed identity management, the immediate benefits of properly managed identities is reduced or negated instances of excessive privilege acquisition and or abuse within the organization. For example, no one with access who is no longer in the organization, no individual whose job role has changed, having permissions beyond those that are appropriate for him or her, and no one with the toxic combination of privileges. There are other risks as well, such as, do we have an authoritative source of identities and access in the event a cyber breach occurs? In the case of identities, the directory, Active Directory, for instance, might be the immediate response to that question, but is it the complete answer? Does your directory, does your Active Directory, does it contain contractors, vendors, partners with access, temp employees, consultants, service personnel, cloud staff? Probably not, right? The access question might even be more problematic than that. All these cases can prevent your IAM program from being successful. And what I've talked about here really just scratches the surface of those use cases impacting both identity and risk. But our recommendation on how to mitigate risk here is to foster regular meetings between the identity and risk teams to ensure that you're streamlined, to ensure that ongoing alignment, right? Get aligned and reap the benefits. You can have efficient onboarding, offboarding. That way employees get access to the resources they need immediately and can start their work as soon as possible. Your policies are aligned and enforced, and it can lead to increased operational efficiency, whether it's helping customers or meeting certain compliance standards. So as we get into compliance here with IAM and GRC, compliance work often requires identity management elements, but are the artifacts and evidence for ongoing compliance efforts managed by the identity team or the compliance team in the organization? If compliance standards demand changes to your IAM program, are those changes getting communicated? Do we have a separate team reviewing new regulations and how those might impact your IAM program? All important questions to answer. Formalizing workflows for attestations, leveraging technologies can be accomplished with IGL or GRC technologies, assuming your integrations are in place. And these attestations are critical when meeting SOX compliance or any of the new privacy regulations such as GDPR. Compliance efforts often require unambiguous access, so no shared accounts. And this might also apply to synthetic accounts, such as service accounts or faceless accounts, et cetera, et cetera. The two most important things here are getting senior leadership buy-in for these two programs and your two teams, IAM and risk, communicating often and effectively. If you can accomplish and achieve those two things, compliance will come easily. When discussing privacy, it can be considered as a subset of compliance or an entirely separate effort. Beyond GDPR, more U.S. states are starting to adopt rigid privacy regulations. New York has the most well-known one, which comes into effect in September 2018. Hope you all are ready. California just passed the Consumer Privacy Act recently in June, but that takes a little bit of time before it goes into effect in January 2020. Right now, GDPR is the big one that we have to deal with, and often U.S. organizations are biting the bullet, so to speak, to ensure GDPR compliance, even though it may be arguable as to whether or not the regulation impacts them. And GDPR requirements include, governance, privacy notices, data subject rights, privacy by design, security breach and notification, so on and so on. Anything in Article 30. So here, now that we've talked about risk and compliance and privacy, here we are back at incident and threat management. And discussions around this and understandings around this must occur beyond just the log reviews that I mentioned earlier. This can include threat and vulnerability management to the extent that these domains either receive information relevant to identity management or are impacted by material threats and vulnerabilities uncovered by the identity team. Lateral movement by identities, typically a precursor or indication of a cyber attack, particularly when those identity credentials involve those of privileged accounts. Indicators of compromise, IOCs if you will, or signs that you're about to be or already have been breached are, again, lateral identity movement, rapid privilege escalation, and dormant or orphan accounts suddenly coming to life. When it comes to threat management, to us, level 1 SOC analysis asks what is being attacked. And level 2 SOC analysis asks, well, who's involved? Who are the identities involved? And a PAM solution can help you to rapidly answer both questions and put a stop to any malicious activity. Integrations can be constructed between PAM technologies and logical GRC modules. We've done this for a number of customers, and aligning your GRC program with the technology that can shut down unwanted access is perfect. So exception management, one area where GRC and IAM can significantly benefit from shared understandings. Exceptions, also called bindings or issues management, right? The immediate benefit of sharing these understandings of these terms means the GRC and the IAM teams can get on the same page when an issue or a finding is uncovered and then subsequently manage it. GRC tools have the ability to centralize these issues and understand the cascading effects of exceptions to policy, which could impact vulnerabilities, threats, and overall cyber risk to the enterprise. When identity management exceptions can be integrated, it will greatly reduce the number of assumptions that take place in the event of a security breach and dramatically reduce the impact of a security breach. Exceptions, even ones that one team might not think is that big of a deal, can have far-reaching effects on the other team and the organization. It's important that exceptions are communicated and agreed upon by both teams. So we suggest regular communications between the risk team and the identity team, alignment between the GRC team and the identity team. Those are so key to normalize exceptions and findings and definitions language in case you do need to review suspicious activity or review or for management reviews. GRC distinctions. So compliance and risk are two of them, and compliance specifically here can have a fairly broad meaning. Compliance has more requirements than simple cybersecurity compliance, and our customers maximizing the value out of their GRC investment explore regulatory requirements for automation benefits using GRC technologies beyond the technology-specific mandates. Examples of that would be our financial services customers that deal with portfolio management, making sure that what they say is in their portfolios for their customers are actually in their portfolios. In healthcare fraud, huge concern to many regulators and companies. So ensuring that healthcare claims are properly reviewed and submitted, and that's scrutinized by a lot of auditors and examiners. Environmental compliance, making sure that your company is operating within the legal limits set forth by the law. Safety compliance, ensuring a safe workplace. And export compliance, abiding by U.S. Customs rules and regulations. So with each of these examples, customers are broadening their GRC footprint by managing these compliance efforts using the in-house systems procured. And, with all those in-house systems that you bring in, you also bring on risk. Like compliance risk extends beyond information technology risks. Customers typically leverage GRC for broader operational and enterprise risks. Financial risk is typically the largest category based in part on the compliance requirements imposed on financial institutions, and the COSO category is developed as a part of those requirements. So, IAM distinction. beyond security and risk. Identity management has features beyond the security and risk management components, and I touched on this briefly earlier, but the high performers that we see are using IAM to improve customer and consumer experience, improve efficiencies around customer-facing roles, and they take advantage of their IAM capabilities to help increase their revenue. IAM can be used for increased efficiencies by taking advantage of SSO capabilities and federated identity management to allow for quicker access to resources such as documents, applications, systems, servers, etc., that employees need to do their jobs. These technologies can also be utilized to provide custom experiences and interfaces depending on the role of the user, whether they're a manager, an employee, or even a customer. So consumer identity management, or CIAM, and automation streamlining customer-facing workers provide both improved user experiences and increased productivity. Those who nurture these top-performing IAM programs will see employee downtime decrease while worker productivity and revenue increases. So this is one of our customer success stories. It's a large national mattress manufacturer. This particular customer is lacking an adequate IAM and GRC program. We came in, we held multiple discussions with all the relevant stakeholders and got everyone on the same page from the beginning of the project. IAM and GRC technologies were integrated and custom collectors and connectors were built to maintain and defend critical aspects of their business infrastructure. This project led to the company meeting all necessary compliance standards and to an increase in revenue as employees were able to spend less time logging in, resetting passwords, hassling with the multiple systems, and more time focusing on the customer. So to summarize here, beyond log feeds, GRC and IAM can combine for technology harmonization, exceptions management to ensure that your organization is as risk-free as it can possibly be, and that the value is optimized between these two siloed programs. It can be logically governed to exploit synergies and uncover both threats and opportunities. Clango has direct experience with customers leveraging their IAM and GRC programs in both clever and profound ways. If more detail is requested, we are happy to provide examples or discuss specific business issues that you may have with your organization. Our goal is to optimize your cybersecurity program and help you increase your revenue. So thank you very much for your time today. I really appreciate it. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me or one of our SMEs. My personal email, bchamley@clango.com. You can contact our SMEs at info@clango.com or by giving them a call at 571-483-2728. Thank you very much for your time and have a great day.